So, welcome everybody, and thanks for everybody for being here today. I'm Piero Bertuzzi, head of vendor management in Yellow Hub. Some of you already knows me because we had the opportunity to talk about maybe rates, negotiations. Actually, I'm the bad guy of the situation here. I'm very happy to see that many of our vendors are here today, and this means that the topic of this webinar is super interesting for you, as it is also for us. In this moment, there are around about more than 100 vendors attending the webinar. And yes, Yellow Hub policy is not to have a huge number of translators, of vendors, but to have a limited number for each language combination and for each specialization. This means that keep a close relationship with them, and also close cooperation. I don't want to waste your time today because I know you are always very busy for your translation project. So let me introduce you Gonzalo Rizza, Production and Innovation Manager in Yellow Hub, who is presently speaking from Spain and who will be more than happy to explain you all the ins and outs on how machine translations work with MEMSOurce, and of course to tackle this topic together. Question time is at the end of Gonzalo's presentation, at the end of the webinar. And I inform you that the webinar is recorded and is available also on Yellow Hub Facebook page, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much and have a good job.
Okay, thank you, Piero, for the introduction. First, I would like to know if everybody is actually hearing and has, or if there is anyone having any kind of issue with the audio, because I've seen a couple of people posting that they couldn't hear. If you cannot hear, or if there's any problem, please, you can use the question panel to say if there is any kind of problem here. Okay, so it seems that it's fixed now. Thank you. Okay, so as Peter was saying, machine translation and post editing, it's quite a topic and quite an issue for the translation industry in general. So in this webinar, we are going to cover pretty much what's going on in the machine translation world, and how we are going to use it, how we are using it, and what are our plans at Yellow Hub on how to deploy machine translation in general. As Piero said, there will be a couple of, well, there will be like 10, 15 minutes, it depends on how fast we go with the presentation at the end for questions and answers. If you feel that you need to ask anything, you can use the question panel, and we'll try to give you the answers at the end of the webinar. Anyway, if there's no time for all the questions, we will take note of the questions and we'll try to get the answers via email to all of you. Let's move on a bit on what are we going to cover today. Well, we had this introduction by Piero. Then we're going to talk about machine translation, in particular what it concerns technical texts, which is, well, I'll explain later, it's our first goal in the use of machine translation. Then we'll talk briefly about what machine translation engines are being used currently at Yellow Hub, and what is machine translation quality estimation, which is a service provided by MEMSOurce. As I see, most of the participants in this webinar already work with us at Yellow Hub, so you know that we are mainly using MEMSOurce, and therefore we are trying to use solutions engineered by MEMSOurce, and that we can somehow integrate with our workflows. We'll speak a little bit about the analysis, how the analysis with machine translation are done, and I'll explain you briefly what are the differences, although it's pretty similar to those of you using MemSource in the past, or even Trados or MemoQ. You know that in the analysis world, there are not so many differences. And then we'll see a little bit of what's the actual post-editing process in MemSource. Some of you may have already done some post-editing tasks in the past. We'll see how to handle them, and then a briefly introduction of what are our goals and expectations regarding machine translation and other like terminology and other things for the future. And then as we said before, there will be a session of questions and answers for you to ask whatever you want, and we'll try to give you the right answers. Okay, so moving on a bit, this is a slide provided by MemSource about the use of post-editing in 2020. As you can see in the chart, machine translation post-editing, it's now dominant as opposed to human translation. So there are currently more texts that are being post-edited than human translated. Although, you know, we can speak briefly about what's post-editing and what's human translation. At Yellow Hub, we believe post-editing it's also human translation, but there has to be a way of making a difference between what's not pre-translated with a machine translation engine and what is the post-editing fact. But I don't like to call it like human translation and post-editing, because it seems that post-editing is not human, and well, post-editing is human, as you all know. So as you can see, the percentage is growing and growing every year. I know that for many vendors, for many translators and linguists, this has always been an issue. Whenever a new development takes place in the translation industry, it happened with CAT tools in the past, that it seemed that it was going to be the end of the translators, which it's not. You can still find translators that are reluctant to use CAT tools. Good luck to them, but I think in a few years' time, machine translation is going to be like the CAT tool, so that everybody's going to be using machine translation pretty much for everything. The thing is that the current situation makes it we are translating more and more. When I say we, I mean the world is translating more and more content, because we are all generating content. It can be like a website, but it can also be like Facebook posts, Instagram posts, whatever. Now there are so many small companies that want to sell abroad. All that gets translated. A lot of companies don't have the means or don't have the time to use human translation only. So machine translation is here, and it's going to stay here, and it's going to develop. So my suggestion to every translator or linguist out there is to start getting used to machine translation, because this is not a trend and it's not going to stop. It's the same for translation companies. I mean, there are translation companies using machine translation, other ones they are not, but eventually in the, I would say, short run, everybody would be using machine translation. So it's better to start getting ready for it. The sooner the better. This chart is supplied by MemSource, and it's talking about general. There's no difference in the field of expertise in which machine translation is being used. We believe that the technical field is one of the fields in which machine translation is more widely used. So at Yellow Hub, we are going to start, well, we've already started using it, but we are going to start using it more and more, mainly in the technical field. Our goal is that by the first quarter of next year, every text in the technical field will be machine translated and therefore post-edited afterwards. So in a few weeks, most of the jobs you would be getting from Yellow Hub would be post-editing jobs when they are about it, when they belong to the technical field, and also when they belong to basic European languages, language combinations. So our goal is not to start using machine translation with rarely used language combinations for us because it's harder for us to trace and to keep quality. So it's more of an unknown territory for us. So we want to play it safe, and we want to start using with languages that we can actually have a good quality, and that we can proofread, and that we can have somehow some control over them. So as you know, there are many different engines for machine translation. I'm sure most of you have heard about DeepL and other different engines, like Google Translate or any other. So there is such a huge amount of, there are also like custom-made engines for big companies and adaptive neural machine translation and all that. But to keep it short, what we are going to be using at Yellow Hub is basically 3 of the most used machine translation engines, which are Amazon Translate, Google Translate, and Microsoft Translator. All those 3 engines are, let's say, embedded in the MemSource panel. So they are part of the machine translation engines offered by MemSource at the present. It may be the case in which more machine translation engines are added to that panel. So, but for now, we are using those 3. When choosing a machine translation engine, it's quite complicated to get to know which one is going to give you the best results. So we used to work with DeepL in the past, and we were using other machine translation engines, and the question was always there: which engine should I use? Is this engine better for this field of expertise or for these language combinations? There are a lot of elements to take into consideration before using one, which made somehow the use of machine translation a bit complicated, because for every project you had to do some tests. Sometimes you didn't have the time to do that. One of the reasons for which most companies are using machine translation, it's faster turnaround times. I know that from a vendor perspective, machine translation is seen as a way of cutting costs. And I mean, it may be the case at some point that machine translation is used to cut costs, of course, but faster turnaround times are now mandatory in the industry. Like, people want translators, the sooner the better, and of course with as much quality as possible. But if we want to compete for clients, we need to give fast turnaround times. We need to deliver quickly. We need to be able to handle big amounts in short times. And that's what machine translation can help us. It's estimated that in general, machine translation can multiply by 3 the daily output of a linguist. So that is cutting turnaround times by 3, which is quite interesting for many companies. And it's no longer a matter of negotiating with a client. It's either you do it or you don't do it, because there's a lot of people there doing it. So there's no way we can stay behind the new trends in the market. So we would like you, and we are having this webinar just to try and explain what has driven us to make these changes, why is this happening, and how do we want it to happen. So talking about engines, the good thing of MemSource is that when you create a project, it's the 3 engines work together, and it's MemSource automatically selecting which is the best engine out of those 3, which one has the more content or the more accurate content to work on that particular text. So we no longer have to think. We no longer have to analyze to choose the best translation engine, the best machine translation engine. But that's MemSource is doing it for us, and it's selecting the engine automatically. So that's why we are working with those three. This has to do with machine translation quality estimation. This is also a very broad topic. Now we are presenting all these topics in general. We will take a look later to the questions, and if we find that there are many questions about a particular topic, then maybe we would develop or we would create a new webinar talking about that particular thing. But in this first webinar, we just wanted to give a broad idea of what's behind machine translation. So machine translation quality estimation, it's a feature that somehow analyzes a file with a machine translation engine and gives kind of fuzzy matches, let's call them, how many times a segment appearing in the source text has been confirmed with that machine translation engine. So it gives you like a breakdown, like an analysis of the current situation of each segment. So below or close to each segment, you get a fuzzy match rate. These are some language combinations, quite random language combinations, and it shows with like the average percentages of perfect machine translation output or near perfect machine translation output, and the high quality machine translation, meaning that in a translation from English into Spanish, you get 51% of either high quality machine translation, near perfect, or perfect machine translation, meaning that 49% has to be retranslated or translated from scratch, or machine translation is not usable in that particular language combination. Of course, again, this is very different depending on which fields you are using or which fields or which field of expertise the text belongs to. So it's not the same to use machine translation over a technical text than over a novel written by someone, or a very descriptive text about tourism or something like that, in which there may be a very different results here. Let's take a look at the analysis here. If you look at where it says 100%, or if you look at the red lines, you have in every analysis you get TM, which means what's coming from the translation memory, NT, what are non-translatables, normally those are numbers and things like that, and MT, what's coming from machine translation. So in this case, if you look at the 100% row, you would see that there are 38 words, 19 of them are non-translatables, and 19 of them are coming from machine translation. None is coming from a translation memory. So machine translation is always, and it's going to be always, used together with translation memory. So we would translate with a translation memory up to the 75% fuzzy matches. Those would be coming from the translation memory, and then all the rest will be pre-translated with the MT engine, which MemSource would have selected for that particular text. And so you would have the different rates and fuzzy matches depending on where is this fuzzy match coming from. Okay. This is probably this. All of you are very familiar with this one slide. This is just a random text I used to create this slide. In here, you can see many different, or you can see the differences of where things are coming from. So if you look at segment 44, it says 25 sheets per minute. You have a 99% fuzzy match, which means it's a near perfect fuzzy match rate, and the suggested translation for that that one segment. In this case, if you look at the number 99, you'll see that it's slightly different from the number 75 you can find below. The 99 number is not underlined, whereas the 75 fuzzy match rate has it's underlined or somehow underlined. It has some lines behind it. When you find lines behind it, non-translatable, or what the system considers to be non-translatable, or a fuzzy match coming from machine translation. So if you look at this, 99 is coming from the translation memory, because I translated in the past something very similar, whereas 75%, the 75 is coming from the machine translation, and we get the quality estimation, which is 75, which is not so good, not so bad. You can see the blue square, it says MT. This is coming again from the machine translation engine. And when you find this empty, that means that it's not a good translation fuzzy match. So that this is like a warning sign saying, watch out, this is raw machine translation. No one has ever confirmed this segment in the past, so it's better that you look at it. The next one, you see the 100% underlined. It's a perfect machine translation coincidence, and it's saying that a lot of people have seen the word interface translated by the word interfaz in Spanish and confirmed it like that. So most likely this is correct, but anyhow, take a look and see if it's correct or not. The same with standard, and the same with the other segment, interface Ethernet. It's like that. So the main thing here is when you're working on post editing, please do take a look to the rate, or to the fuzzy match rate, and see if it's underlined or not. I'm going to show you now this screen in which you can see this is the same. The other one was the slide. This is the actual real project. This is a normal, that's a confirmed segment, just like that. And here you can find all the different rates. You see that most of the 99% are coming from translation memory, because I translated at the very beginning this segment. So it's taking most of the fuzzy matches from the translation memory, or these ones, because they consider it's machine translation, consider it's 100%. Here we can see, this is part of the screenshot I sent. This is the actual, for those of you not working with memsource, probably you've already guessed, this is the source text, this is the target text, and there you have the translation, the translation memory matches, and what's the translation memory called, who created it, who modified it, and the metadata, if there is any, for that particular segment. So if we come here, you would see also what is the machine translation engine used. So it's memsource translate, and it's taking the Amazon Translate engine. Okay. In every project, you can see this, and you can, know at least from which engine are the fuzzy matches coming, and which one was in use, and all that. There's no score for this one. The score is automatically generated, it's 100%. So basically, you would see a lot of, well, some 100, it depends on the text as well. You would see a lot of 100% underlined. You would see a lot of 99s, and you would see 75 and empty. Empty, it's like pretty much disregard this, and try your luck translating it, or maybe it's correct. It depends. It very much depends on the kind of text. Don't panic in the sense that you see a lot of 100% matches. It's because it was a very basic text I wanted to use, so to show like differences in 99, 100%, 75. So I was using a very easy text, or very technical, so that it was very clear. Then I used this other text, which is part of Yellow Hub website, and it's more discursive. There's more descriptive. It's talking about our translation services, and this is the Spanish part. It's automatically translated. It gives a 75%. Obviously, in longer segments, you would get lower and lower fuzzy match rates, because it's highly unlikely that someone has ever translated such a long segment with machine translation and all that. But so it's more complicated, but it doesn't give you a horrible rate. I can read in Spanish, and it sounds quite good, to be honest. So now it can be a matter of changing one thing or the other, but it's okay. And then I wanted to add a new thing for you to check, because I've added a part in the English text. I've added a text in a different language, in this case in Basque, because I wanted to make sure that it was a completely different language, just to be able to spot it quite easily. And as you can see, when the machine translation engine detects that it's another language, it's not that it's translating the other language into Spanish. It's just copying the source into the target, which is what actually should be done. But just for you to understand that the machine translation engine is also detecting languages within segments. So when they find that something is not in the source language it should be, it just leaves it as it is in the target. Okay. Going back to the slides. Further developments. Well, as I said before, we are going to start this with the technical texts, but our plan is to develop this into many other areas within Yellow Hub. So probably at some point you'll see financial texts being pre-translated with machine translation, some legal texts being pre-translated, patents, all that. So this, we are going to take it one step at a time. We'll see how things work. At some point, we may ask you to participate in some quality analysis of what do we get from machine translation, so that we see when to take the next step, in which language combinations or in which fields of expertise should we work more. By the end of 2021, we would like to have at least between 60 and 70% of the texts pre-translated with machine translation. So I'm saying this because I also want you to think that this is something that's going to develop. It's not something that's going to stay as it is just like that. In the near future, new developments will be made in machine translation. We are not developing machine translation engines. We are just looking around to find what is a solution that suits us better. And as translators and linguists, we would like to have your input also on this, because I understand that there is a lot of controversy regarding machine translation and the machine translation quality. And we want to know what's your stake on this. Also, sometimes it's very easy to just say, okay, machine translation is useless, it doesn't help at all, but that's not the way to go. I believe that most of you are using machine translation, either internally or privately for your clients or for other LSPs you may work with, in order to speed up your translation processes. So it indeed helps, but we need to understand how much it helps. Regarding this, how much it helps, with whenever we think of how much, it always comes to rates and all that. There are different metrics companies are using to evaluate the cost saving options of machine translation. Some of them, some companies, I don't know if you have worked with any of those, they measure the distance in editing. So what they do is They take the text that you've post edited. They say, okay, you've made 20 corrections in 30 minutes. This is your rate. We find this to be quite unfair and quite unrealistic, because you may have a sentence that you can spend, I don't know, 3 minutes thinking of that sentence, and then realize that it's better to leave it as it is. So there's no change, 3 minutes involved, whatever, you're not paid at all for that, and this kind of thing. So for us, we are going to keep a price. Piero probably has already talked to most of you or to some of you. We're going to keep a rate per word of post editing, and that's it. If you have to post edit very little, then better for you. If you have to post edit quite a lot, then of course, let us know. We'll see what's been post edited. We'll see if those post editing changes were necessary or not, but always let us know. One thing I want to stress, and I want you to keep in mind, machine translation may have a different output depending on how the text is, the source text is formatted. So if at some point you see that your text or a text that has been assigned to you, machine translation is not working properly because of the segmentation or because of the tagging or because of any reason, please contact your project manager. We'll take a look, we'll try to fix it, or we'll see what can we do. But you know, we are open to discussing on a per project basis what can be done to improve the system. Another thing we want to focus during 2021 is the terminology, and most likely we'll be handling a webinar on terminology and how to manage terminology with MemSource and also with machine translation, because machine translation is based on an algorithm, and therefore terminology, it's always a little bit more complicated than it is with a normal translation memory. So we'll discuss this in a different webinar, in a different session, because it takes quite some time, and there are some best practices and how to add terms, use terms, and use the terms in the quality assurance step. And of course, we are looking for new machine translation engines with better results. We are waiting also for MemSource to have other machine translation engines incorporated to their services. We are trying to get the best we can get in the market. Of course, we are not Google, we are not Amazon, we cannot develop our engines yet, but we'll see. Technology is getting faster, and we believe that it's just a matter of keeping an eye open on that. So we'll definitely keep an eye, and we'll see what can we do with new engines and new verticals, maybe in which we can use machine translation. This is pretty much what I wanted to say. I know I speak a lot and maybe too fast and with a strange accent, but I hope you've understood what I wanted to say. I would like to hear from you if you have like any question. Also, if you would like to talk about any particular or specific topic in the near future, or even today, we still have like 10 minutes or so to have questions and answers. So please feel free if you want to ask any question. Also, here you have both Piero's and my email in case you want to send us an email, or if there is something you want to ask but you don't want to ask in public, please feel free to contact us with any question you may have. I would give you like a couple of minutes if you're interested in asking any question, and we'll see. Yes, Brian has some questions regarding the number results and the underlining. When a number is underlined, that means that it's coming from a machine translation engine. Okay, what's the difference? Okay, the difference between, okay, I understand the question, Brian. You may get let's say a fuzzy match coming from a translation memory, fuzzy match coming from a translation memory. Sorry, I don't know if I said the same thing twice. You can have a fuzzy match coming from a translation memory or a fuzzy match coming from a machine translation engine. The difference is that in general, a fuzzy match coming from a translation memory should be always correct, because the translation memory is coming from the past translations we've delivered to the client, or even maybe sometimes the client is sending their own translation memory. So let's say that priority-wise, translation memory comes first, and then machine translation comes second. So let's say an 80% fuzzy match coming from a translation memory, it's probably very, very good. An 80% coming from a machine translation, it may be very good, but it may not be very good depending on the context. So this is something that as translators or as post editors, you need to know how much you can trust first the translation memory, and second the machine translation output. Okay, differences between post editing and proofreading. That's a very good one. That's a very good one. Proofreading, when you do it, when you do a proofreading, when at Yellow Hub we send a proofreading job, that means that there was a human translating or a human writing a text. Whereas post-editing always means that there was an artificial intelligence doing it. So that's the main difference between post-editing and proofreading. In proofreading, one of the things you can see in proofreading a lot is typos, for example. It may be the case in which you find spelling mistakes or verb and subject, grammar mistakes between verb and subject, and these kind of mistakes that we as humans do when we speak any language. Whereas with post editing, it's very unlikely that you would find typos and very unlikely that you would find grammar mistakes. You may find other kind of mistakes that have to do more with the meaning or the context in which something was written, but it's a machine writing it, it's an algorithm writing it, so they are very accurate in spelling or grammar. There may be other problems, so somehow the approach is a bit different. With proofreading, you have to, I believe proofreading, it's a bit harder to do than post editing, because you may think that something is correct because you've heard it so many times, and maybe it's not. So yeah, that's the main difference, is the who's behind the translation. Okay. Yeah, underlining counts, it's machine translation, yes. And a segment with the empty, that means that there is no fuzzy match rate. So pretty much when you see this blue box with the letters empty, that means that the rate, the fuzzy match rate, let's call it like that, the quality estimation rate, it's below 75%. So it means that you need to take a close eye to that one, because it's pure translation, pure machine translation, and maybe the quality is not very good. In most of the, I mean, all of you, probably all of you have worked with DeepL or with other engines before. The difference between DeepL and MemSource is that with MemSource we get this quality estimation, which is the number that appears underlined. That's good because it can help you go through the project and, let's say, like sort 100% first and confirm the 100% if you find them to be correct. And what the machine translation quality estimation believes that it's not very good quality, it gives you this blue box with the empty written on it. So to those empty, you need to keep a close eye. The engine, okay. Amelie is asking, like, when you find a 75% underline, that means that 75% of the segment is correct. Yes and no. It means that there is a 75% chance that the segment is completely okay, but there is a 25% chance that you may have to do some adjustment in the segment. Okay, there's also a question about how MemSource handles numbers and how machine translation in general handles number. I know that this is very important for everybody working in the financial and sometimes in the technical area when decimal separators and these things change from language to language. This is something that, from what I've heard, MemSource is working on, and probably it would be fixed soon. That's all I can say. I'm sorry I cannot be more precise on this one, but we are waiting for MemSource to adjust this, because there are some other CAD tools that do the conversion in numbers automatically. So far, MemSource is not doing it, but they are working on it. Yes, there's Francesca is asking about inconsistencies with terminology. Of course, empty often introduces inconsistencies with terminology. So because for empty, terminology doesn't exist. You cannot match the empty engine with a term base. So when the empty is running through the project, terminology is lost. So my suggestion, this is something we would speak in a future webinar. My suggestion in these cases would be to get the machine translation, pre-translate the text, then perform a QA only focusing on terminology, and fix the terminology, and then go through the text normally, as you would do in a normal post-editing job. Some people do it at the end. They go through the segments and then they perform the QA based on terminology only, so that they can see what's if there are any terminological mismatches. I rather do it at the very beginning. That is up to you. But of course, you can create a term base specific for that project, or a term base for that client. At Yellow Hub, we create term bases specifically on a client level. So every client should have their own terminology that you can update with new terms, and they can get approved by the client and so on. We'll talk about terminology in a different session, because otherwise, I mean, terminology is a topic that could take easily like 1 hour. Tags, those friendly little squares that make our life much easier. Actually, one of the big advantages of machine translation engines is tagging. I mean, for machine translation, it's very easy. They place the tags automatically in every text in the same position as they are in the source file. This comes very handy when the tags come at the beginning of the sentence and at the end of the sentence. When there are tags in between, it may be problematic. So when you have a project with a lot of tags, if you find it to be with a really lot of tags, it's better if you contact your project manager to see if there can be, if something can be done to that file to reduce the number of tags, because most likely those tags are only functional tags in terms of marking space or spaces or font types and all that. This happens a lot when you get a PDF and you convert it into a Word file. Sometimes every little space between words, for example, it's considered to be a tag. So you can have like multiple tags everywhere. Those tags are not important. Actually, you could place them anywhere and everything would work normally. However, if you get some text like that, please get back to your project manager and we'll see what can we do. Also, you can send me an email. I'm the head of production, so I would be anyway involved in this kind of text with heavily tagged. I think we've gone through all the questions so far. So it's like we still have, well, actually I was planning this for 45 minutes. I'm only 3 minutes over time, so it's I'm very proud of myself because I tend to speak a lot. And yeah, so if you want to ask any question, that's fine. If not, you can always send me an email or send Piero an email if it has to do with vendor management.
Yes, I would add that I noticed that most of questions were concern of MT, which is the main topic of this webinar, and I'm happy to know that they weren't about rates. But I'm pleased to inform you that vendor management is available to discuss with each of you the post-editing rate, which is important that each of you has a post-editing rate to work with MT, of course, with post-editing, and I'm available to discuss, of course, in a separate place each rate of post-editing that most of you already have actually. But in case, of course, you have the possibility, as you know, to add your rate by yourself into the system through the your vendor portal, and then once you will have this rate, I will check it and contact you to discuss with you the best rate to manage it.
Yes, this is quite interesting, Piero. Piero speaking from vendor management point of view. I speak from production point of view. Please take into consideration that we are matching projects with language combinations and job types. So post-editing is a job type. If you don't have a post-editing rate, it will be very likely that you are never assigned to a project because it's post-editing. So please make sure that you contact Piero or you fill in your profile with your post-editing rates in our vendor portal.
Exactly, right.
Okay, then thank you so much for joining. My very last request is, please, if you have any interest in any particular topic, please send me an email. I'm gonna work on terminology and a webinar on terminology, but of course, I'll be more than happy to have new input or new ideas coming from you so that we can develop some other webinars.
Okay.
Okay, then. So thank you all for coming,
you.
and hope it was not too boring.
Okay, thank you everybody for being with us today. And if case we will organize another webinar, we will be happy to, of course, to inform you again with the main mailing. Thank you.